Camera. All right. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks so much for being with us. I'm Joy Lim Nakrin here, joined by attorney Josh Schiffer. This is our segment, Beyond the Headlines.
Thank you
Thanks so
so
much
much.
for being with us, Josh.
I love being here, and I love seeing you, Joy. And today, this is as busy and wild as it gets. There is so much going on, I cannot even keep my head straight.
Well, there is, and here, normally when we have you on, we talk about legal cases that are ongoing. We've been talking about YSL, we've been talking about the Trump case.
Crime.
But I want to ask you today about something that is impacting, I would say, most of our viewers. I mean, I keep hearing about it from everybody, including my own mom, the USPS.
Who doesn't get mail? It really.
Well, actually, a lot of people here in Metro Atlanta, now that you mention it.
Maybe that is the lead. Maybe we need to redo that. That should be the lead-in, because you haven't been getting your mail, and it's not just us here in Atlanta. This is a nationwide issue that's been brewing here for a couple of years, ever since Louis DeJoy was appointed as our national postmaster, which is a 10-year position. Unlike most government positions, it's not one that the president and other elected officials get to mess with. They can't pull him off the job because they don't like him or they have a problem. No, this is one of those independent, non-politicized government management positions that is supposed to be free from the influence of politics. That's the 10-year term. And what we're dealing with now are big questions about what's happening under Louis DeJoy's 10-year term.
Yeah, and people are so frustrated. It's a story that we've been covering extensively here on Atlanta News First. Right now in Washington, D.C., lawmakers are, conducting a grilling. And Senator Ossoff has promised that he would ask some very tough questions to the Postmaster General. Just yesterday, several state lawmakers sent, including Senator Warnock and Representative McBath sent a letter basically demanding answers, set a deadline of I think it was May 10th, next month. Basically, we need some accountability. We need some clarity. What's happening with the mail system? Why aren't people getting their mail?
It's one of those shocking things, because you grow up and you put a stamp on a letter and you put it in the box and it disappears and then it gets somewhere, and we really don't think too much about how much it impacts our daily life. But of the lifebloods of our nation, of our economy, the mail is at the absolute center of all of that.
So here's the thing. Lawmakers are grilling, they're demanding this and that and the other thing, which, rightfully so, but what legal leg do they have to stand on? What's going to come of all this?
So Congress does have substantial oversight power, and what they really can do is mess with the budget and mess with the ways that money gets spent, because they can't yank his chain and take him off the job necessarily. It's much more about demanding accountability, making people look bad, justifying what expenditures do come from the
family
government.
safety and
this
security,
relates
or
to a
just the
10-year
orderly
turnaround
delivery
plan
of
that
mail
Louis DeJoy had rolled out since he was appointed to the office, that involves basically a wholesale revolution of what the United States Postal Service is supposed to look like. And there's a big question. Was it okay? What needed to be fixed? And what does the future need to look like? Should it look like? And a lot of people are concerned because Louis DeJoy comes out of the third-party private corporations that contract with the United States Postal Service to perform duties. And in fact, there is still an existing conflict allegedly involving some of the investments he has in companies that are the subcontractors for the U.S. Postal Service. And it's a reasonable criticism that we should look at who's making these decisions and whether they would benefit some of Mr. DeJoy's, prior co-workers, other groups that he's associated with. He does have a rather large equity stake in one of these companies himself, and was well known as a prominent Republican fundraiser for decades before he was appointed U.S. Postmaster General, along with his wife, who is another prominent financial, money person in politics, primarily for Republican causes.
Okay, so we're talking about the consequences being essentially taking the money away, humiliation.
Kind of. That's really kind of what it is.
Of Louis DeJoy, but What about class action lawsuits? Because people have missed, medication that was, supposed to come in the mail, important documents, whether it's related to, their mortgage. I mean, it's affecting so many people. Can everybody get together and file a class action lawsuit?
The impact on this has been undeniable, and it would be incalculable to determine exactly how much damage has flown from this late mail. But unfortunately, being a quasi-governmental agency, it would be very difficult for any individual or group to sue the United States Postal Service under some sort of tortious cause of action, being that there was some sort of injury. Now, there may be some creative backdoors to that, and bluntly, if anybody can figure that out, it's the plaintiff's bar, because I know exactly how important this issue is to law firms since I own one. And law firms are punished when the mail is late. We are always waiting for something that's been sent, and this slowdown dramatically impacts lawyers and legal agencies, their ability to do their jobs.
Absolutely, all sorts of businesses. Okay, so you say generally, government bodies or even, government-related bodies are protected by immunity. However, there are some exceptions. You've already said from the outset you don't think that they'd apply. But what are the exceptions? What are the possibilities? And explain a little bit more about how this immunity would essentially shield USPS.
Well, the immunity is straightforward. If you represent someone, an individual or an organization that's been granted specific immunity for one reason or another, you go and research exactly where that immunity flows out of. And for government and governmental agencies, it's called sovereign immunity. Comes back to when you couldn't sue the sovereign. You couldn't sue the king or the queen because they were the government, and it would be kind of like suing yourself. And in some ways, anytime you sue the government, you are suing yourself as a taxpayer. So there are specific limitations that are written into the law, codified, that prevent you from bringing any kind of a suit for damages against the government. And for the limited circumstances where you are allowed to bring lawsuits against the government, there are a number of additional steps included. Specifically, an ante-litem notice must be included. There are some other hoops you need to jump through because you can't just sue the government willy-nilly. It would slow the government down to a crawl.
Yeah, and also taxpayers would go broke.
Absolutely. There would be
paying for
an
it.
army of people just defending, kind of pointless lawsuits against the government every time you turned around. So there is a very good policy for immunity, but then we get to issues like this where an injury has clearly occurred. That injury is widespread, affects millions of Americans, and there may be some demands for reform. We may see people go and agitate and legislate for new pathways to hold the government accountable, specifically when it comes to something like this service, which is the United States Postal Service. It is a service that the government has created an agency to provide for it, us as taxpayers. It's backed up and supported by the government, but many people don't realize that the U.S. Postal Service basically operates as an independent business just with a government bank account on the back end.
Yeah. Any final thoughts on USPS at legal recourse?
Most importantly, it's the intention that we're getting, and hopefully this will spur some reform to prevent the United States Postal Service and other agencies from really being run roughshod. The management that Mr. DeJoy has brought, I've heard a lot of strong and valid criticisms. I look forward to seeing some changes, and I hope our Postal Service comes back to what we expect.
Yeah, I think we all do. So I want to also ask you about, obviously, another story that is top of mind for so many viewers, and that is the first criminal trial of the former president. I apologize, I'm showing the wrong video there. Okay, I'm just multitasking. The first criminal trial of the former president, Donald Trump, now underway in New York, and this is for the hush money payments to Stormy Daniels.
The smallest one seems to come up first. This was the case that a lot of people weren't paying attention to because it didn't have the gravity of, stealing state secrets or trying to steal. No, this was a financial paperwork case, and it wasn't the big one. But the way the cookie crumbles, this is the one that's actually going to trial.
And probably the only one that's going to trial before the election.
That's what it looks like at the rate that we're going. We're expecting a 6 to 8 week trial in front of Judge Juan Merchan in New York City. This is happening in Manhattan, and former President Trump is being required to be there every single day, the whole day. Some of the biggest exposure the nation's had to a president in history. Just imagine the president, former president, and an active presidential candidate is going to be sitting in a room surrounded by people for 8 to 10 hours a day. And we've already seen some repercussions from that with Ms. Halberman's reporting, apparently getting under former President Trump's skin about him falling asleep. As someone who has fallen asleep in court many times, I can tell you, it's awesome to fall asleep in court. It's super warm. The chairs are kind of comfortable. It's, there's a lot of talking. You can fall asleep in a heartbeat if you are not actively involved.
Not while you are the defense attorney.
No. Clearly, I only fall asleep during other people's cases. But really, imagine sitting there, and jury selection is not exciting unless you are the juror or the lawyer.
No, it's true.
It is awful. I met Joy doing legal work on a different network that was Court TV.
They're not a competitor. They don't do local news.
Joy sat through a lot of trials.
I saw a lot of people falling asleep.
Voir dire is horrible. It's just awful.
Well, it's especially during jury selection. Voir dire for the viewers, that's jury selection. But, they're asking people basically their life story. You know what I mean? Random questions.
You've got to be a heck of a gossip to find that stuff interesting.
What elementary school did you go to? Whatever. And just to see if there was any potential connection to anyone else on the case, right? And see if there's any kind of bias. So,
but that's the big question over the next couple of weeks, because lawyers will tell you, you win or lose your case based on jury selection. If you get the wrong jury, you're done.
That's right.
It doesn't matter how good a case you tried.
And we're day 2. I want the viewers to know we're day 2 of jury selection at this moment. And at the end of the day yesterday, there had been no jurors seated. I don't know what the status is at this point, but
what's happened, according to the numbers that I've been reviewing, is about half of the proposed jurors are self-selecting themselves out of consideration, which is not always something that happens in court.
Well, yeah, I mean, most people, we know this. Maybe it's different with this case, but most people don't really want to serve on juries. And sometimes when it's a high-profile case, it can go either way. Either people are really invested, or they're like, I don't want to be, everyone after me because they don't like whatever decision I make on this case, right? So
absolutely. And we've got big questions about people wanting to serve, or wanting to serve, more importantly, for the wrong reasons.
Yeah.
That is always a risk. But then you've got people that may have, other motivations. You have people that you don't want on the jury. Needless to say, choosing these jurors, and this is the process by which it's going to be whittled down from a huge group to a smaller group to an even smaller group. That process, it's exclusionary. You don't get to choose the people you do want. You get to exclude the people you don't want. That's a big issue when you're talking about someone who is in a contested race, a very polarizing national high-profile figure. How do you get people that are willing to be open and fair? It's not that they like Donald Trump or don't like Donald Trump. That's not the question. The question is to whether they can put their biases aside and do the job. Obviously, former President Trump has decided that's not something that's likely, and he has continued to loudly protest the conditions that he's facing and the trial he's facing, even in the face of a gag order from the judge.
I want to ask you a question. So it's very interesting that he's being required to appear every single day of this trial, because that's not usually the case, right?
Now, in criminal, it is. Remember,
every single day?
In criminal, you are presumed to be present and appropriate for court every single day. The only way you can get out of appearing in a criminal, yes, as long as you're the defendant. Okay. The only way you can get out of appearing as a criminal defendant in a criminal case is either through permission of a judge, or you are some sort of security threat and are disruptive, or a health threat such as having a contagious disease. Other than that, so you are required to be there, and if he doesn't want to be there, that's why judges lock you up and put you in the clink.
Yeah.
Because you will be present, because the sheriff will bring you there.
He might be hoping for a contagious disease at this point, at some point.
I believe he would probably like a contagious disease if it would mean more attention on what he is facing, because he has done a spectacular job of leveraging the challenges he faces and trying to make them at the heart of his campaign. Very clearly, former President Trump is running on a platform that he is persecuted by a deep state establishment community, of which this criminal case allegedly is a manifestation of.
Well, and yesterday, day one of jury selection, he essentially told the media, this is basically a politically motivated trial driven by his presidential opponent.
Which is bluntly a great defense. I'm a criminal defense lawyer. My job is to analyze how to prevent the state from achieving its goal of making 12 people agree that a law has been broken in a very specific way. When you're going to represent someone that is so high profile and so polarizing, it's probably in the best interest to lean into that polarization, because it's going to carry over to the jury. And I don't need 12 people to win a criminal case if I represent the defendant. I just need 2, 3, 4, 5 people to go back into that jury room and say exactly what you just did, Joy, that this is a political attack, it's not a crime, and we should all get out of here. That's what the defense is really gunning for.
Gotcha. All right. Well, Attorney Josh Schiffer, thank you so much for joining us. Before I let you go, if people want to, reach out to you, maybe hire you, do you exclusively do criminal defense? What do you do? How can people reach you? How do they hire you?
I just work for people. I do mostly criminal defense, but my firm, my partner, Doug, we do a lot of big civil stuff as well. We've done the Epstein case out of our office in the Virgin Islands, but we do car wrecks. And I love doing criminal work. We're just not a high volume or marketing heavy firm. Just Google me, or you can find me always on Twitter. I love being on Twitter at Lawyer Schiff.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Attorney Josh Schiffer, joining us with insight and analysis. We're going to keep following the latest, of course, on both of these stories, on Mr. Trump's first criminal trial, as well as what's happening with USPS. You can get all the latest updates by downloading our free Atlanta News First. Oh, apologize. There's Josh. He's not our mobile news app. He's
and
not
YSL too. I'm telling you, people, in the downtime, turn on that YSL because it's amazing.
Definitely. All right. Thank you so much, and have a great day.